So while everybody is focused on the 2020 election, there are some advancements being made around the world, in the nation, and all through different industries that we should probably keep in tune with. And one of those is with AI, artificial intelligence. And hey, everybody, I'm Brian Duff, and I want to welcome you to this 5-part mini-series on where we currently are with AI and where we may be going. In this first video, I am going to speak about some of the latest advent, some of the latest things that are here to help us, the human beings, live better, more productive, more happy lives. And so with this first article we're looking at is OpenAI's latest breakthrough is astonishingly powerful, but still fighting its flaws. Now, before we get really deep in this, I want to talk about one of the benefits of AI, right? And that is over here on AdeloSubstack.com, where this article shows ways in which AI can help us. So I'm going to read a couple paragraphs of the article just to help give you an idea of where AI is at and what it can do for us. Feeling unproductive? Maybe you should stop overthinking. Right? Hey, what better way than have AI help us stop overthinking? I mean, we got 2020, man, we got all kinds of overthinking going on, right? So the article starts off, in order to get something done, maybe we need to think less. Seems counterintuitive, but I believe sometimes our thoughts can get in the way of the creative process. We can work better at times when we tune out the external world and focus on what's in front of us, right? What better way than to get AI to come in and do things for us so that we can focus on things that are more impactful on our lives rather than some of the mundane things we go about, right? And so next, the article goes on to define 2 different types of thinking that are real important for understanding how AI can help us. Definition 1, creative thinking, CT, is the act of using your mind to come up with ideas that are not already present in reality or that have never existed before. It is a form of mental activity that involves the use of logic and reason, right? Definition number 2, overthinking, or OT, is the act of trying to come up with ideas that have already been thought through by someone else. OT usually results in ideas that are impractical, impossible, or even stupid. Now, how do these 2 concepts relate to each other? Well, I'll tell you, the way definition number 1 and definition number 2 relate to each other, especially for when it comes to AI, is that this entire post, this entire article was written by AI. And that's what these next 2 posts are about. These next 2 articles are OpenAI's latest breakthrough is astonishingly powerful, but still fighting its flaws. Okay? The most exciting new arrival in the world of AI looks on the surface disarmingly simple. It's not some subtle game-playing program that can outthink humanity's finest or mechanically advanced robot that backflips like an Olympian. No, it's merely an autocomplete program. Like one in the Google search bar. You start typing, it predicts what comes next. But while this sounds simple, it's an invention that could end up defining the decade to come. So what does that mean? Basically, the AI that they're talking about here, this isn't like some chess game AI. This isn't some AI that makes cars drive. This is literally an AI that writes articles. Feeling unproductive? Maybe you should stop overthinking. Hey, what better way to stop overthinking than have AI literally write the articles we read? The program itself is called GPT-3, and it's the work of a San Francisco-based AI lab, OpenAI, an outfit that was founded with the ambitious, some say delusional, goal of steering the development of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, artificial general intelligence, computer programs that possess all the depth, variety, and flexibility of the human mind. So basically what they're trying to do is create an artificial human mind, right? But literally, when we think about, okay, that's a computer, but what do they say here about AGI, right? A computer program that possesses all the depth, variety, and flexibility of the human mind. So not a human mind, but a computer program that functions like the human mind, or exactly like the human mind. For some observers, GPT-3, while very definitely not AGI, could well be the first step towards creating this sort of intelligence. After all, they argue, what is human speech if not an incredibly complex autocomplete program running on the black box of our brains? Now, when it comes to speech, speech is defined as the expression of or the ability to express thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds. Now, that's important to understand because if we speak and you can understand what I'm saying and I understand what you're saying, then how does the computer, how does the AI do the same thing? And the article goes on to talk about that, where it says, like all deep learning systems, GPT-3 looks for patterns in data. To simplify things, the program has been trained on a huge body of text that it's mined for statistical regularities. These regularities are unknown to humans, but they're stored as billions of weighted connections between the different nodes in GPT-3's neural network. In other words, it scours the internet. It reads articles and does all this stuff where it takes this data and stores it, and the computer, through its AI, is drawing connections between words like blue shirt, eyeglasses, and it starts making predictive text, just like, again, when you fill in Google. Importantly, there's no human input involved in the process. The program looks and finds patterns without any guidance, which it then uses to complete text prompts. If you input the word fire into GPT-3, the program knows based on the weights in its network that the words truck and alarm are much more likely to follow than lucid or elvish. So far, so simple. Go figure that in an article on AI, we got the nerd elvish in there, right? Way to go, J.R.R. Tolkien. What differentiates GPT-3 is the scale of which it operates and the mind-boggling array of autocomplete tasks this allows it to tackle. The first GPT, released in 2018, contained 117 million parameters, these being the weights of the connections between the network's nodes and a good proxy for the model's complexity. GPT-2, released in 2019, last year, remember 2019, contained 1.5 billion parameters. And now GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters. So at that rate, I mean, we look at Moore's Law, and while they say Moore's Law is slowing down, AI is going bonkers with how fast it's going. The data set GPT-3 was trained on is similarly mammoth. It's hard to estimate the total size, but we know that the entirety of the English Wikipedia, spanning some 6 million articles, makes up only 0.6% of its training data. Think about it, 6 million articles it can scour, and just those 6 million articles for figuring out how speech works is less than 1% of all the information it holds, right? The rest of the data comes from digitized books and various web links. That means that GPT-3's training data not only includes things like news articles, recipes, and poetry, but also coding manuals, fan fiction, religious prophecy, and so on. Any type of text that's been uploaded to the internet has likely become part of the mindset of GPT-3s. And yes, that includes the bad stuff as well, right? That's what we all worry about with this fucking AI. And that's the really big hiccup, I think, for myself when it comes to AI is how do we teach, or how does the AI learn? Can it even learn the emotional side, the downside of certain decisions it makes, right? Like if it goes and starts picking up on like Mein Kampf and shit, and starts incorporating that into its process as if that's just no big deal, well, where do we run from there, right? So that's the part where I think AI gets really scary. That's the Terminator and Skynet, like, hey, everybody just becomes a threat. I'm going to protect myself, and that goes on. So again, there's bad stuff out there that AI can pick up on that we need. Again, there's a lot of questions that I think need answering, or that we need to consider, at least science, not me, but science needs to consider before they go down some of these rabbit holes, right? What this unheeding depth and complexity enables, though, is a corresponding depth and complexity in output. You may have seen examples floating around Twitter and social media recently, but it turns out that autocomplete AI is a wonderfully flexible tool simply because so much information can be stored as text. Over the past few weeks, OpenAI has encouraged these experiments, I'm going to read here in a second, by seeding members of the AI community with access to GPT-3's commercial API, a simple text-in, text-out interface that the company is selling to customers as a private beta. This has resulted in a flood of new use cases. The article goes on to say it's hardly comprehensive, but here's a small sample of things people have created so far with GPT-3. A question-based search engine. It's like Google, but for questions and answers. Type a question and GPT-3 directs you to the relevant Wikipedia URL for the answer. A chatbot that lets you talk to historical figures. That would be pretty cool because GPT-3 has been trained on so many digitized books, it's absorbed a fair amount of knowledge relevant to specific thinkers. That means you can prime GPT-3 to talk like the philosopher. Now, that's how that article was written. We'll see it here in a minute. basically my understanding on the way the article was written was they typed in the title, feeling unproductive, maybe you should stop overthinking, and put in some other basic text with that, and the AI went and did the article, right? So you can go talk to famous people or have a text conversation with famous people, I guess. Solve language and syntax puzzles from just a few examples. Code generation based on text descriptions. Describe a design element or page layout of your choice in simple words, and GPT-3 spits out the relevant code. So, I mean, imagine you can sit here and talk to your computer and say, hey, I want my website, or I want this to look like this. And next thing you know, there it is. I mean, if you ever used any of the supposedly easy-to-use drawing programs, yeah, that's why I don't have a bunch of drawing stuff done, because they're so easy to use. Where is that AI? Answer medical queries. A medical student from the UK used GPT-3 to answer healthcare questions. The program not only gave the right answer, but correctly explained the underlying biological mechanism. And the article goes on to relate how GPT-3 answers medical queries, helps out with games, does a bunch of stuff, even composes guitar music if you feed in the right couple of things to it. It writes creative fiction and auto-completes images. And that's what I really want to get into next, showing you here. Look at these, and I'll increase the size here a little bit. Look at these pictures, right? So if you look all the way over to the left, you see the 4 pictures that have half the picture blacked out. And then if you look all the way over to the right, you see the 4 pictures that were the original. So the 4 pictures on the left are just half blacked out versions of the pictures all the way over on the right. And all the pictures in the middle are pictures that AI created just based off this half of an image. Look how close they get some of those together there, man. Like, look at this one. I mean, he doesn't really have the arms, but he's close here. This is pretty close. Look at the cat. Here's the cat with the smiley face. And next thing you know, it has all kinds of different stuff held up in front of its face. Here you see the original with people walking across the striped crosswalk. I mean, for AI not having all the information and coming up with that, man, that's not too bad. And maybe it's a little scary. I don't know. I do know it's pretty scary, right? When you think about it, because as humans, man, we can really do some crazy stuff with things, right? So let's go on down, and we'll get this wrapped up here real quick. Is all these samples, everything we just talked about, the pictures and the guitar notes, need a little context, though, to better understand them. First, what makes them impressive is that GPT-3 had not been trained to complete any of those specific tasks. What usually happens with language models, including GPT-2, is that they complete a base layer training. Basically, the scientists, people who are programming it, go in there and they give it a base layer of understanding and say, hey, here's how this works. But with GPT-3, that wasn't the case. They went in there and they did what they call here few-shot learning, where they just basically gave it a few examples of what they wanted the output to be, right? Like, I mean, hey, who doesn't know? Hey, go write me a paper. Well, this is what we want this paper to look like at the end. And that's all they really gave to it, and you see everything that it came up with. Now, the article goes on to start taking a bunch of shots at GPT-3 and AI and saying, oh, there's all these problems with it. Well, hey, what are we as human beings, right? We are problem solvers, right? Someone is going to try to figure out how to make this better, how to make it work better, right? Because there's money involved. There's all this kind of stuff involved. So if the company OpenAI was able to increase the size of the GPT model 100 times in just a year, how big will GPT have to become before it can be as reliable as a human? How much data will it need before its mistakes become difficult to detect and they disappear entirely? You know, there are people out there are arguing that we're approaching the limits of what these language models can do, and others are saying that there's more room for an improvement, which, like, come on. Are we really going to say that, oh, no, this is it? We're not going much farther. No, we're good with that. I mean, let's look at the super colliders. Look into that kind of stuff that, we don't always know what's going to happen when we flip the switch. And one thing that's certain, though, is we as human beings want to get to the point, we always do, to where we can flip that switch. Oh, let me see what's going to happen here. Do I destroy the world? Do we know what's really going to happen? I don't believe they always do. And the last article I just want to touch on is an article from The Verge, and it's titled, "A College Student Used GPT-3 to Write Fake Blog Posts and Ended Up at the Top of Hacker News." And the article we're talking about is the feeling unproductive article that the AI generated. And the article starts with, college student Liam Poor used the language generating AI tool GPT-3 to produce a fake blog post that recently landed the #1 spot on Hacker News, MIT Technology Review reported. Poor was trying to demonstrate that the content produced by GPT-3 could fool people into believing it was written by a human. And he told MIT Technology Review it was super easy, actually, which was the scary part. So now some of the stats, we all know about the article now. We've talked about it long enough. He says down here, Poor says, the post went viral in a matter of a few hours. The blog had more than 26,000 visitors. He wrote that only one person reached out to ask if the post was AI generated, although several commenters did guess GPT-3 was the author, but Poor says the community downvoted those comments, right? So you can see here, this is either something written by GPT-3 or the human equivalent. Zero substantive content, pure regurgitation. Then he had the reply, maybe you're new here, but your comment punches below the belt and isn't acceptable in a community like this. If you disagree, be civil, give reasons rather than throw insults. And there you have it, folks. AI is now at the point where it is fooling a lot of human readers with some very basic posts. And so where does it all go? Well, you're going to have to go to my next video and check that out. And hey, if you like this video, if you like this series of videos that I'm doing on AI right now, please go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe. Do all that stuff, mash the bell. But the one thing you can do that would really help me out is please just share this video. I want more people to understand while we have the politics of 2020 going on and all the stuff that's going to happen probably as we go through 2020 into 2021, it doesn't seem like there's any let up from the noise in our ears that we have constantly going on. Well, if you know people that would benefit by understanding, hey, here's what's happening in AI. We need to keep our head about us, looking around and seeing what's coming down the road. And that's the reason I'm doing all this. So everybody, as always, stay safe, secure, and prepared. And never forget, you are just one prep away from being better prepared. Bye for now.